good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of Hocus Focus, a new Fortean paranormal and other kind of magazine format program and here on Beyond Room 313, but it'll also be hopscotched or leapfrogged over to Sarah's channel. So anyway, welcome. I'm Thomas Sheridan.
And I'm Sara Mondaini.
And I hope you enjoy what we present to you in the next hour or so. This will also feature the return of the psychic weather. I know a lot of you missed that. So, Sara, welcome. Are you excited? Are you terrified? Are you ready to go?
I'm completely balanced. I'm 50% excited and 50% terrified, but we're going to do okay.
Yeah, well, that's what you should be. That's the way to be, because that ensures it's good. So, listen, I'm glad that you suggest this program was really Sarah's suggestion to me. And I was looking to put the psychic weather back on, but I didn't really want to just do that on its own. It needed a vehicle for it to be inserted into, like it used to be in The Weak and Strange. And now it's inserted into this. But also we'll have another feature that Sara will be doing, which will be called Spiritual Hygiene. Do you want to tell us something about that, Sara?
Yeah, I'm just going to go through tips and ideas of just how to keep your energy clear from psychic attack and just getting through day-to-day, the day-to-day fog that we have to go through, because your nervous system is an extension of your environment. So if you can keep that clean, then you can pretty much wade through anything. So it's important.
Also, along with that, we will have special reports that will be on-location reports. We'll have our first one done tonight. So we're really going to try and have this looking like a real news program of sorts in that sort of magazine style. Now, the reason why we also decided to do it this way is there's not a lot of shows out there like this on YouTube, and we felt there was a gap in there. And we're both mad Forteans, and we love all this stuff anyway. And we like a lot of the same stuff too. So we're going to start with the first story this week, and I'll leave it to you, Sara.
Okay. So we're going to be discussing the Mothman reports to start with. And I've been doing a bit of reading about that, and I found 4 interesting reports, 2 from aviation workers and 2 from just regular people on the street.
These are the recent sightings in Chicago. And around,
yes, that's right. Yeah. I picked the most recent ones right up until the very last one that's been reported. So, but the reports do go back to 1957, and we can put a link in the description to that database so people can have a look at every single report that's been made and have a read for themselves.
Right.
Okay. All these reports were all in the same area, around the Chicago, Illinois area, Lake Michigan area that this thing's been spotted. I'm just going to read this first one, which was the one that caught my attention first, because this actually involves 2 sightings and a big cover-up at O'Hare International Airport, and it also involves some of the employees losing their job for speaking out about it. So I'm just going to read the report to you. So the title is Man Reports Cover-Up of Winged Creature Sighting at O'Hare International Airport. And there's a man called Manuel Navarrete of the UFO Clearinghouse who received a report from a man claiming to be an employee at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago, Illinois, who said that around 11:30 p.m. on the 30th of December 2021, he and 2 of his fellow employees saw 3 black, red-eyed winged creatures while working near a hangar. Although the man claimed that he and another employee recorded the event, he said that the airport officials required them to delete the video. Navarrete from the UFO Clearinghouse said he was able to interview the man who claimed to be an 8-year maintenance employee who performs routine maintenance on a variety of planes flown by American Airlines and its subsidiaries. The witness said that they were in the process of hooking up a plane to a tug to tow into a hangar for maintenance when he turned to his right and saw the three entities standing there next to the chain link fence that separated the tarmac from the parking lot. He stated that they were staring directly at him and his co-workers, and that's when he called out to his co-workers, who immediately noticed the entities. He said that he pulled out his camera and started to record the entities, which he claimed he got about a minute's worth of video before these things took off. The witness stated the middle one took off first, followed by the other two. He then went on to say that security showed up within a few seconds of these entities taking flight, and they were quickly followed by American airline personnel who appeared to be supervisors, and these supervisors instructed the witnesses and the co-workers to immediately stop recording and to return back to work. The witness and the co-workers were brought into the hangar where they were proceeding to do the required maintenance, and they were again approached by the supervisors and told to report to the break room immediately and to wait there for management to turn up. They were told not to talk or engage with anybody else until they'd spoken to managers. When the managers arrived, they were joined by other American airline executives, and the witnesses and the co-workers were told not to talk about this incident to anyone, and that they needed to forward the video that they shot to the supervisors and then immediately delete that video from their phones in front of the supervisors and executives. They were told they would not be allowed to leave the break room until they had done this. When the witness and the co-workers asked to speak to their union steward regarding what they were being asked to do, they were told that this superseded the union and there was nothing the union would be able to do to help them, as this was a matter of internal security. The witnesses reluctantly forwarded and deleted the video through fear of losing their job, seniority and the benefits, as did the co-workers. Navarrete then said the man told him that he and his co-workers approached the union about this incident, and they were told that the union would not look into the incident and they were told that the union would look into the incident and get back to them. However, to date, the union has not followed up with the witness and has not responded to any inquiries about the incident by the witness.
How would you go back to doing a normal day's work after seeing something like that? That's actually one of the most terrifying ones I've heard. Either three of them standing by the gates staring like innocuously at you.
Yes.
The red eyes thing again. What was the date on that one, Sarah?
The date on this one was the December the 30th, 2021. But this also relates to a sighting on the 22nd of July, 2022, because the same thing happened again. There were witnesses that saw these things again, and a lot of those witnesses were actually laid off and terminated because of what they'd seen, and they were told or encouraged not to talk about these sightings to anybody else. And MUFON got involved in that, the UFO investigation society over in the US, and they closed it down and refused to comment.
Now, the thing is, the Mothman thing, as we know from the Point Pleasant thing, it's associated with the collapse of the Silver Bridge, which so therefore it has this kind of strong kind of banshee connections, that it is a harbinger of doom. But nothing has happened at O'Hare that I'm aware of. But there is interesting stuff there as well. There's been huge UFO sightings up along the Wisconsin coast on Lake Michigan in recent, a town called Belgium on the coast there. Now, Wisconsin, that state is literally just outside the northern suburbs of Chicago. So, and Lake Michigan runs right up it. So it's the same general area. And Lake Michigan is an area that's like really big for the paranormal stuff. There's actually even a thing called the Lake Michigan Triangle, where like ships and planes have mysteriously vanished. There's also stories of monsters. So it is a very paranormal laced area.
Do you think it's something to do with the lake? Just like up in Loch Ness, we've got the loch there.
Yeah, that recent, I think it was that recent Netflix documentary on the Mothman, which is actually the one I don't know if you've seen. I sent it to you tonight, which is absolutely excellent. Heavily features my friend Susan Shepherd, the West Virginia folklorist and author, who sadly died in 2020. And it mentioned something I'd never heard about the Mothman thing in Point Pleasant in West Virginia, was that there was always stories of occultists operating in the TNT area. No, I've never heard, that was a new one for me. I never heard that stories of the occultist operating, because when John Keel went to Point Pleasant, initially it was to see UFO sightings. There was massive UFOs up and down the Ohio River. Now this seems to have it all as well. It has the UFOs. Currently we're seeing up the lake in Belgium, the town of Belgium, in Wisconsin, and we also have the Mothman thing. The one missing element we don't have is the Men in Black, because that always seems it's like a triple thing. Now, that's so. I really want to know more about this occultic thing. Is there some kind of dark occult that can summon these things or whatever?
Or do they just live there?
Well, also Chicago was covered in tumulus mounds, like the ones we have in this part of the world there. From from ancient times, call them passage mounds, whatever, burial mounds. But the city of Chicago had dozens of them on all maps, and they were basically leveled, and a city built upon that. And this whole thing that, like, if Mothman is a fairy, like the Banshee, and that's what Susan Shepherd was alluding to as well, that it was like a fairy, that we all know the stories of when you damage ancient structures, the fairies seek their revenge. And so it could be something like that. Just I'm always interested in when it happens and why. Because when I first heard about this story at O'Hare Airport a few years ago, that's the earlier ones than that, I'm sure you have. And I was waiting for a crash or something to happen there.
Right.
Do
you think they are auguries, or do you think maybe they are relevant to the people that see them, or relevant to events that may be occurring?
Well, that was the whole thing with the Banshee, but the Banshee is very, very family specific. It runs in family lines. And what happened in Point Pleasant was, like, lots of people from the area were killed in that bridge collapse. So, and then it continued to be seen afterwards. So it didn't just show up, the bridge fell down, and then it wasn't seen again. It continued to be seen right up until the present in the area. So if that I don't know if that could be coincidental or an augury or not, but it's also been seen at Chernobyl. I don't know if you heard that one. It was actually
no, I haven't.
Yeah, I was actually seeing Chernobyl after the explosion happened, and another one, and it's the videos out there if you can find it. It was actually filmed flying around when the big Fukushima, the big Japanese tsunami happened, and the one was heavily filmed. And you see this part where the water's coming in really fast and hard, and there's a bird that looks like it's the size of an elephant flying around the water, above the water, and then it just vanishes. It like comes in and out of dimensions. It goes in, it goes out, it goes in, and it's absolutely gigantic. So that's probably part of the same phenomena too.
Right. Interesting. So there's some big events that take place after before this thing's seen, and then this thing shows up.
Well, apparently so. It seems to be that's the general theory. But nothing's happened that we don't want it to happen at O'Hare Airport. But we've heard, O'Hare Airport, I think, is the busiest airport in the US because all the flights connect there. It's a big terminal for all east and west, north and south.
There's another one which was dated again at the airport. This was the 31st of May, actually, 2020. And the same guy from the UFO clearinghouse, Manuel Navarrete, he spoke to the witness who said that it was a pilot this time that saw it. And he and the co-pilot had just landed and were in the process of taxiing off the main runway and making their way to the terminal when they had their sighting. And when asked, the witness stated that they were flying a Boeing 777 and something caught his attention from the corner of his eye, and that's when he turned to see a winged humanoid. And he said it was at least 6 feet tall and solid black and looked like a very thin human with large wings, again, fairy-like. But not miniature, full size.
Yeah.
When asked if the wings were making any movement, he said they were straight out and appeared to be in a glide configuration. The witness said that he alerted his co-pilot, who was also able to see the entity for a few seconds before it disappeared above the windows of the plane, which immediately reminded me of the Bill Shatner episode of the Twilight Zone, which frightened me to death as a child. When he saw that thing on the wing, you know. So that
anyone who saw that growing up, even as an adult, it stays with you forever.
Forever, yeah. And that's what that reminded me of. Although they were on the ground when they saw it, but was it flying with them? It just, if you'd have seen that up at 30,000 feet, how would you deal with that? I don't know. And again, the UFO clearinghouse said it was a genuine sighting of something that can't be explained, and it does deserve further investigation. And that's what this UFO clearinghouse looks into, these Mothman sightings. So they don't know what it was, but they're both men, both pilots, were adamant that they saw this 6-foot winged humanoid by the wing.
I often wonder what role conjuration plays in some of these events of UFOs and other similar activity around airports. You think of not so much now, they're not like that, but in the old days, air traffic control, they were darkened rooms where a guy or a woman stared into a thing going around like this.
Yeah.
And remember in the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where the plane, an object is moving towards the plane. This kind of
yes,
it's almost like that's something very those guys are under tremendous pressure, right, to have to keep the skies safe, and this is especially before computers, and they had to watch every flight in their sector, monitor everything. Tremendous pressure, tremendous concentration, and that's all the things of a charge that you need in a sort of release a pure stream of psychic energy. I often wonder how many of the UFO sightings around airports and airplanes were actually generated by air traffic controllers accidentally, in a state of extreme psychic intensity over that radar thing,
Yeah, almost like they're concentrating so hard they're manifesting this. Do you mean?
Yeah, like a telepathic kind of phenomena. It actually manifests as a what you call it, the classic Carl Jungians say it's a projection of their fears put out there. Like, right. You're so worried about, oh God, if I make one mistake wrong, I'll crash an airplane and be responsible for the loads of deaths of all these people. Well, that's got to take a tremendous psychic toll, and in order to stay in that zone, in the old days, especially before computers, it's probably still is like that, but tremendous focus and attention, which is really what you have in a magical state anyway to achieve change. But another thing too, I want to, the first one was 2021 and the other one was 2020, and do you have a third one? What date is that?
Well, it was the 2022 one at the airport where a lot of people lost their the witnesses lost their jobs. The most recent one was June the 20th, 2022.
So they're all very recent.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, and what was that one? The one you didn't read? What was that?
I've got two here from civilians. Nothing to do with the airport, just people walking about.
And what did they say?
Well, this one was June 20th, 2022, and this one was reported to an organisation called the Singular Fortean Society. I don't know if you've heard of them. They were contacted by a lady called Shana Clippert, who's 27, and she said that her and her mother had both seen a massive black winged humanoid and a glowing UFO in Rockford, Illinois, during the early hours of the 20th of June, 2022. They began at approximately 1 a.m. when Shana and her mother Barbara were outside of her apartment. They were in the parking lot facing towards the building that she lived in. And next to that, between her building and the canal, there's an empty parking lot, and then there's the canal. And across from that, there's a shop that has lights on it, and it's very well lit. And that's when she heard a screech that made her turn her head towards that direction. And it looked like it crawled out of the canal because she saw the black silhouette crawling out onto the embankment. She looked over at her mum, who was also looking at the entity, because she saw it out of the corner of her eye, and it was described as a black blob that then took flight. And they could clearly see the shape of the wings and the size of this thing flying through the tree line. Shauna told the investigator that the creature reminded her of the character Marcus from the film Underworld because of its humanoid appearance and bat-like wings.
But it came out of a canal.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah. This is a whole new development here.
She says it was massive and it was hunched over when it was coming out of the canal, and it looked about the same size of their dumpster that they have at the back of the apartment building. She says she has no clue what to even compare it to. It was super tall and big, and when it walked on the ground, it flapped its wings. It wasn't a fast flap because the wings were so big. It was very slow. It was very slow, and then it went off into a more secluded spot, and they lost sight of it. But she estimated the creature's wingspan to be around 12 feet. And she described the sound it made as a dinosaur screech, like a raptor. She didn't see any glowing red eyes or anything like that, but it flew away, and they were looking at its profile most of the time, or its back, and they said they were both freaking out, and it was pitch black, and it flew away. And that lasted about 2 or 3 minutes. So what they did next was they ran back into the apartment and got a neighbour out and said, come and bring your camera, come and look at this. So they went back out to have a look at it, and they couldn't see anything. And then they saw a bright glowing UFO appear in the sky. And it looked like it was 50 to 60 feet in the air above the empty parking lot where they'd just seen this black creature. And it looked like a very fluid moving stingray that was glowing in the air. And that also had wings, although it was mechanical. And they could see it glowing against the dark sky. And it wasn't just a white object because the sky was pitch black. They saw the whole thing glowing, and it flew very smoothly, and it stayed at the same height in the air. And then it turned around, came back over, and disappeared in the same spot it materialized. It didn't go up and it didn't go down. And Shauna said the object was about 6 feet in length and very skinny. It was very fluid, very smooth, very slow moving. No jerky movements. And the only thing she says she can describe it as is a flying stingray.
Wow.
And that she thinks the two are connected somehow. It's too much of a coincidence within 10 minutes of seeing the first thing, and then that thing appeared, some kind of a craft.
So we have the Ohio River. Excuse me, in Point Pleasant. We have the Ohio River. We have Lake Michigan and a canal in Chicago. And maybe there's an underappreciated or not properly explored aspect of the Mothman story: water.
Yeah.
If it's some kind of aquatic entity that's, and then that would bring us back to the Crowley thing in Loch Ness, that it is a kind of if there was cults operating near these places, entities brought from the water, brought forward. It's definitely something that definitely needs more consideration.
She did say it looked like some character called Marcus from the film Underworld, but I can't bring that to mind who that is. I haven't seen the film, so I don't know. I'm going to have a look. I think maybe I'm getting mixed up with a Water World. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. That's I'll pop a picture on the screen of this Marcus character when we're talking.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was this lady and her mother. And then we have another sighting, and this is the last report that I've brought to our attention. And this one apparently is compared to a monster from the film Jeepers Creepers.
Ooh, okay.
I've seen the film, but I can't recall them. I can't recall the monster.
Yeah, it's a terrifying thing driving a van. It's true.
Right.
Terrifying, yeah.
Right. Well, she compares it to that, and her story again. She reported it to the singular Fortean Society, and she saw it at 8 p.m. on October the 8th, 2020. It was a black humanoid figure with very large wings and legs in Cape. Now, just excuse my pronunciation. Cape Girardeau, Missouri. I may have pronounced that wrong. I am sorry. According to the woman, the sighting took place while heading east on Bertling Street near Southeast Missouri State softball field. She was with her 2 girls and a fiance, and they were walking around the streets where the houses have Halloween decorations at night. They went down one way and came back the other to look at both sides of the streets, admiring the decorations. And when they did that and were heading back home, they came up over a hill. And when we got to the stop sign, that's when we saw it. It was like a human figure, but with big wings. The feet and the toes were pointed to the ground. It had scrawny legs, but it had very muscled calves, and the feet were long and pointy. It was maybe 6 feet tall. The wings weren't open, and they were still closed. These wings, she said, looked like they were made of skin. They were really pointy, and they were past its head. And it looked like somebody getting ready to dive off a diving board with their hands out. She said the head was very little and round, kind of pointed, but round. And she said she estimated the creature to have been 100 feet from the car, and it looked like it had just leaped out from the trees to right in front of the road. It was bigger than a bird, and it didn't look like a bird, she said. When I saw it, it was the kind of thing that looked like the monster from Jeepers Creepers. The fiancé had seen it too, and the children had seen it too, and the sighting lasted for only 6 to 8 seconds. She'd never heard of this thing before, so she immediately went online to look around to see if anybody else had seen something similar, and that's when she found the articles that had been published by the singular Fortean Society. And she read about a man who had said that he and his son encountered a strange flying creature while hunting ducks near West Alton in Missouri in 2016, which is approximately 120 miles north of where this lady saw it. She said she was going to get her phone out to record it, but then she thought better of it because she was frightened in case it saw her and tried to come after her. She said, I'd never seen or read anything about it before until I looked it up to see if anybody else had had a similar experience looking at being approached by a bat-looking human. And she said it was a shock to see something like that, and it's a little scary to go out into the night knowing that something like that is out there. And she's right, I agree with her. It's not something I'd want to come into contact with.
Any of them, especially the one coming out of the canal, that Lovecraftian aspect to it, that really put the willies up me. Thanks very much, Sarah, for those reports on the Mothman. I just want to add one thing to that at the end. Although it's let's assuming it is a harbinger. We hope it's not. And just to try and stay on the right side of controversy here, we recently had a lot of stories in the last couple of years about pilots having to be needle crafted in order to fly their aircraft, and the trouble and the potential worries and hazards of that. Could the fact that it's the busiest airport in America, one of the busiest in the world, I believe, and especially as I mentioned, American Airlines, is the actual manifestation, a harbinger of the fears or the elements of that within the pilots and so on? That's one I definitely think is worth wondering about.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than one big incident coming, what about thousands of small ones as a result of the needlecraft?
Of that, yeah.
You do have to wonder about that one.
I mean, if I had taken it for any reason like that, I would be very afraid now. Very afraid.
Yeah, and it's, I even coined the phrase there, skydive, relating directly to this. And, so it's something to, I don't believe, people always say that people go on as if history has ended, history's over. But they also go on and notice in the Fortean scene as if paranormal is over, and as if Fortean is over, and it's never going to recur or come back again in any way dramatic or massive. It's all the great stuff was in the past. But no, it shows up in different ways. And I think we could well be looking at something here that's very connected to all what's going on in the world at the moment. The subconscious fears, especially coming up out of the water. What does the water represent? The repository of subconscious fears.
Well, that reminds me of something you told me about the bogs near where you live.
Yeah.
And you said you didn't like going down there because I don't know if you'd said you'd seen something there or it felt ominous around there and you didn't like being around there.
Well, I did see black helicopters. I actually saw the classic black helicopters, and I will never forget it as long as I live. Above the bog were black helicopters, but not making any sound, and they were moving like this.
Right.
That's in the sky. But they're helicopters. And that was the classic black helicopter thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think, when you think about, like, so many Fortean things are alchemical. They involve water. They involve the earth. They involve the air. They involve matter and spirit and mind. There's almost like a whole thing together. Bogs, bogs are spooky places. They're not pleasant places to be in the daytime. They're very nice in the summer, but you get eaten alive by insects. But the bog near me here is I don't even like going in the daytime. It's creepy, and it's completely remote. No one lives there. So if you had an accident or something happened to you, no one would find you for hours.
Yeah.
And that's fortunate. That's happened recently to somebody who died in the bog there, fell down, and so. We can only, one of the things I think we both, if you're watching the show, don't think that Fortean and paranormal stuff is over. It's ongoing.
In my opinion, or for me personally, the supernatural, it's showing itself more and more. It's more transparent now. It's right in your face. If you know what to look for, or if you're that way inclined, it's there. It's tangible. It's you can reach out almost and touch it. It's not supernatural anymore. It's natural. It's just there. And I don't know if that is because we're getting more sensitive, or whether that is because there's something else at play with what's going on in the world, that we some kind of a spiritual battle that we can't see.
I agree. It's both. We become more sensitive. But we've become more sensitive because we're in unknown territory as human beings in the world right now. We're in a completely new place. So we'll leave it at that. So anyone has anything on the Mothman, if you live in that part of the country, if the US or anywhere else, and you want to leave a comment down below, that's what it's there for. And so thanks very much for that, Sarah.
Okay, Thomas, so everybody's been waiting for this and they've all been dying to ask you. So I'm going to ask on their behalf, have you got the psychic weather report this week?
Indeed, I do. And we have new flashy titles. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the return of the Psychic Weather Report. As the show is not weekly, though sometimes it could be twice weekly, depends on how much content we can find, or it could be once every 2 weeks. This is just a general weather report, not for the week that it is, but what's been happening lately. Over the Christmas and New Year period, I was planning to do a psychic weather report, but it's a bad time of year to do it because people's emotions are generally all over the place during the holiday season. And it's not a good time to gauge the psychic weather of the society in general because of the pressures of the holiday and people traveling and dealing with family and people they can't stand and so on like that, disappointment, loneliness, anxiety, and so on. So I usually give it a week and then I start putting the weather vanes out and see what's happening. There's two things I've noticed with the psychic weather at the moment developing in the last couple of days, and it's a very interesting dichotomy going on here. One is tremendous anxiety. I'm seeing enormous anxiety in a lot of people. real old-fashioned anxiety, like the old-fashioned anxiety that you see it portrayed in all American movies and stuff, where people are not in a good focused and state of mind. They're not afraid, they're not traumatized, they don't know what they're worried about, but they're worried about something. There is a definite sense of tremendous anxiety everywhere. I can see it with people packing their groceries in the supermarket today. And yesterday I saw it as well. I could see a certain jitteriness around the place. I went to buy some stuff for the car today, and this place where I usually get my car stuff, they're usually a lot of fun, these young guys there, and they all seem kind of a bit tied up and a bit nervous about something. So this anxiety is definitely prevalent in the psychic world at the moment. But on top of that, I'm also noticing a lot of bravery and a lot of people standing their ground in all kinds of things. People I know in their jobs who've had trouble with their bosses, whatever, are fighting back. People I've noticed in general are standing up if they feel that they've been messed about. So it's very interesting how on one side of the thing, I'm seeing all these people who are extremely anxious and jittery. On the other side, I'm seeing people that have developed a sense of bravery and fortitude, which has come out of nowhere. And I'm seeing it, like in a lot of people I know, they're now, things they were putting off or a bit nervous about, they're now like saying, what the hell with that? I've had enough. So that's this week in psychic weather this week. There's no Renfielding. None at all. By the way, that's Sarah's new Renfielding graphic you just saw. We'll use that when Renfielding is going on. My God, we had serious Renfielding at the beginning of December, end of November. It was a Renfield supercell we had then. We're not seeing any Renfielding at the moment. We're just seeing old-fashioned, old-time anxiety coupled with people who sort of like seem to have decided, I've had enough, I'm putting my foot down on this. And that's the psychic weather this week at me, Thomas Sheridan.
Yeah, I know what you mean about the anxiety. I've been having some anxiety myself. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. If somebody said, "What's the matter with you?" I just got this, I don't know, this feeling of dread, but I don't know why, which is worse, I believe, than having an anxiety that you know why. It's the not knowing that kind of makes it worse and feeds it. So yeah, absolutely.
That's how I felt. I was going to say to the people I've been seeing in the state today, they couldn't tell me why. It was almost like a psychic anxiety storm sweeping.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it could be things because of bigger things in the world and so on like that, and also that post-Christmas sort of letdown period. But they have the anxiety. It's more associated with just before Christmas. And then other ones I know, people that have this kind of bravery about them I've seen lately. They've put their foot down, made a stand, they drew a line in the sand. Quite a few people I know in my regular life have done that in jobs and stuff, and all unrelated. They just said to me, when I was talking about that boss that was sticking me around, I told them today, no more. And a lot of people are changing jobs and stuff at the moment. So there's a lot of bravery. So we have the bravery too. So it'd be interesting to see how this pans out. But again, in the comment section, tell us how you feel. So that's the second big story on tonight's show. And the main story is somebody that both Sarah and I grew up reading his books. And we're wondering what happened to him. And that is who, Sarah?
DEEPAK Chopra.
Okay.
The one and only.
Tell me about your story with him, your journey with the man.
Well, Deepak's always been a big influence, both in my spiritual and magical journey, especially with what I've learned about the Ayurvedic medicine in my own practice for keeping my body and my energy and nervous system as clean and clear as I possibly can. And his knowledge on the quantum field has helped me so much in my own magic and manifesting by being able to bend reality. and bring things in. His early works are fantastic, and I've got some of his books here today, and I want to talk about one of them a bit later on, and maybe show you what we've got and give some recommendations for his earlier work. But Deepak's disappointed me recently, and it's hard when it's somebody that you've got a big affinity for and that you've looked up to and you've learned so much from. And I've become really disheartened with this strange 180-degree turn in his attitude towards life and death, and his outright promotion of masks and the needlecraft, which to me is promoting fear and subservient compliance in a system that doesn't have anybody's good health at the heart of its concern. Back in 2022, his social media 2020, his social media pages showed him with his students masked up, and anybody who questioned that in the comments was absolutely vilified or ridiculed. You know, he used to talk about the importance of the breath, and there he was conducting a meditation with the participants masked up and suppressing that very thing that all his earlier teachings are based on, the breath. And his early works talk about death being a transition and something not to be afraid of. And now here he is pushing this death cult and a dubious substance at best, and pushing fear on his audience to be afraid of something that has a 99.998 ad nauseum recovery rate and has never even been shown to be isolated in the first place. And in all the years I've been following him, and I'm sure yourself, Thomas, you've never once heard him say to be afraid of the flu or any other of those seasonal viruses that have circulated. And it just seems to me that he's moved on to some kind of Oprah Winfrey daytime TV type spirituality now. But having said that, I don't want to throw the baby out of the bathwater. And I do love his earlier works, and I will continue to read his earlier stuff and use it and learn from it. But the question has to be asked, what the hell has happened to Deepak Chopra? And not only that, but is he responsible for many of the suddenlies, if those suddenlies were members of his flock or his audience that took that poison on his authority and his teachings and his blogs and videos? I don't know. I'm just very disappointed, and I just want to know, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, from quantum healing and prana to needlecraft and face masks. You couldn't make it up, could you? My journey with Deepak Chopra began in the early 1990s when I was living in New York, and I was watching a public access TV channel. They used to have all these local public access, like Channel 79 and all these kinds of things in the early days of cable TV. And one night I come across this lovely Indian man who's telling his life story to a woman in a program, and he just had a book that come out, and I think it might have been the Perfect Health one. I think that one had come out, and he wasn't known at all. And this guy was charming. He was very likable. He had a lovely speaking accent. He was Indian, and he was very funny. He was very charming. He was telling stories that he used to be like this chain smoking, like badly eaten person. And then, you know, he was raised in a kind of an Anglo culture in India. So he didn't really celebrate or know much about his Hindu background. And then he said he got into it because when he was in college, the Beatles were all the rage with the Maharishi and George Harrison. And so he thought he could meet girls by playing up the whole Indian thing. And I was thinking, this guy's great. He's a really great storyteller and everything. And then he was talking about things like that. You have the ability to heal your body. Everything is in there. You don't need, medicines are okay. He said surgery is fine, but in terms of like medications, it's very iffy. It was the first time I really heard stuff like this spoken like that in this way. And he was saying that he was talking about how things like sounds can heal, and how changing your own mindset And so that I didn't hear much from him. And then there was a big New Age shop in Long Island that had hundreds and hundreds of New Age books. And I used to go in there and I was always terribly disappointed. And I found two cassettes. I picked up two cassettes that I saw his name on them because I recognized them. The first one was The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success, which is also a book he wrote. And the other one was Sacred Verses, Healing Sounds, which was about the Bhagavad Gita and the ability of things. No, sorry, it's not about the Bhagavad, it's a different one. He has another one on the Bhagavad Gita as well. And this was about the basically etymology and how certain sounds were universal and found in languages all over the world, and actually had the ability to change your physiology and your actual mental state by saying them a certain way. Now, these are the DVD versions. I had to see the cassette versions, and I literally played all three cassettes until they were worn down. I used to play them at night falling asleep. I used to do this, and I said, this guy is amazing. And then he started to do a few TV specials, and then he ends up with Oprah. And then I was like, people were saying, oh, he's a big sellout. I was like, don't get that. He's not really. There's nothing wrong with trying to spread his stuff out there. Blah, 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 blah. And even with that, I was fine until you sent me that article the other day. That's to see just how far well, actually, it happened a few years back. He had a really bad case of Trump derangement syndrome. I remember that.
He did.
Yeah,
really he did.
But I said, okay, that's his politics. He's allowed to have that. But I think I can pinpoint where he went down. He made an album with people like Demi Moore and Dave Stewart, where it was like love songs and stuff like that, where he was doing a spoken word thing with these like people and bands and stuff like that. And he did a beautiful one with Demi Moore that everyone remembers, so like a kind of a song of seduction. And I think that was the beginning of the end, because he fell in with the Hollywood crowd. But I never in my wildest dreams would I ever think it would go from quantum healing and prana to needlecraft and masks. That's my journey with him. And again, I am not going to throw. That's the same way I feel about U2 and Bruce Springsteen. I'm not going to let what's happened now destroy my love of the happiness and the pleasure the early stuff, the early music gave me. And I feel the same way about him. I'm not a fanatic. I'm not one of these Christians. It throws everything out. It's all damned and cursed. I have to be nuanced about it. And is that how you feel?
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be sat here talking with you now.
Yeah,
because I've just learned so much from him, and it's stuff that's worked for me in my own practice. So I'll always be grateful to him for that. And we've always got his vast library of earlier works to fall back on. And he's like he says in his books, he's a spiritual being having a human experience. So he's gone down the wrong path. He's made a mistake. People do.
I always know that one from the say language is the maker of reality. He's even lost his Indian accent. Have you noticed that? His Indian accent was really thick in the early days, and it was really, really, but it was lovely to listen to. And he'd have like, it's like, where's that man gone? Where's that guy gone? And I read the one article you sent me about his thing on. He was talking about how the yoga scene in America, yoga classes are. He said he's hearing very disturbing news that people in yoga circles in the US are rejecting the needlecraft. And he was quite nasty and angry about it. And I'm like,
it was worse. It was passive aggressiveness.
And he was comparing these people to like QAnon. I don't even know what QAnon is. I've heard about it, but I don't even know what it is. I know it seems to be a go-to thing with these types of people. But I mean, it's like, where the hell have you gone? Has he been compromised? Is he become a boring old fart? And I can remember, even it wasn't that long ago, probably only 5 years ago, that he was on Coast to Coast with George Nuri, and he was talking about like numerology and the meaning of numbers and numbers having a specific power. And even that seems like 1,000 years ago compared to where he is now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just disappointed in the way that he's gone. I mean, he's 75 now. And he looks great. He looks very healthy and he looks great. But his attitude towards the needlecraft and those that don't want to take it and how irresponsible they are, and comparing them to far right, which is what the QAnon is all based on. Everybody, you know, if you think different, then you're irresponsible and you're a Trump lover. Then I don't know. I just don't think that spirituality as a place for politics and pushing agendas, it should be he's just become a bit of a paradox of himself. And
I remember 20 years ago, I was watching the 700 Club with Jerry Falwell. It's a big, huge Christian TV show in America. I used to watch it for a laugh. And one night they did an expose on Deepak Chopra. And they were saying things like he worships the devil. Is Hinduism is devil worship? And they showed like pictures of Kali, and the Hindu religion worships demons and stuff. And the funny thing is now, and they made him look as bad as possible. The funny thing is now it's come full circle in that when I was reading that article that you sent me last week, he was talking like Jerry Falwell now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, in his defense there, if you've not been accused of worshipping the devil, then you've not made it, have you? I mean, me and you are probably going to be accused of worshipping the devil when these videos go out over the weeks, but we know it's not true. I don't believe that of Deepak. I just think he's worshipping maybe the political party or the globalists. I don't know.
There's also the old adage, I don't know how true it is, you hear it a lot. Has he been got to, you know?
Has he been got to? Have they got something on him? I mean, yeah. Has the Me Too movement got at him? I don't know. Has he pinched somebody's bottom over the years? I don't know.
No, we're not saying that's happened. We're not saying that's happened.
Oh, no, absolutely not. No. It's an example.
That, you know, there's such bastards in the globalists, they'll use anything, or they'll invent anything, or they'll Photoshop anything. You know,
or has he just been paid a handsome sum to promote it?
Or was the deal in the early days made? We will give you all the record deal. It'd be just like the mafia. Well, and they are international criminal gangsters. You know, the house of the mafia. They'll do you a favor and they say, oh, well, like everything you want happen, but one day the knock will come on the door and you have to do and say what we tell you to do and say. And I often wonder if something like that.
Do you remember in the early days of 2021 when the needlecraft was being promoted on the television? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name drop here, but people like Elton John and Michael Caine and all these people and Lenny Henry, they all came on the TV. Apparently, I didn't see it on the TV, but they all came on the TV and there was adverts and it was 24/7. Get the needlecraft. Do it for your family. Do it for your church. Do it for this. Do it for that. And not a single one of them said it out of the goodness of the heart for humanity because they thought that was what was best for humanity. They were all paid to say a scripts and lines. So was Deepak paid some money to put this out? Was it just a script? Is it just an act? You know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
The one that paid the piper finally called the tune. I mean, we saw that in music with Neil Young on the Joe Rogan thing, and Neil Young has completely destroyed his legacy as far as many people are concerned. You know, this was actually one of the more people I'd looked up to. I can remember it, and when the punk rock thing first started in America, you had bands like Fleetwood Mac saying we'll leave our record labels if they sign any of these punk rock bands, where you have the likes of Neil Young saying, no, we badly need them over here. We need the American music needs a kick up the backside. And again, he's gone from that to I take my stuff off Spotify because Joe Rogan had Robert Malone on it. It just never stops. It's like it's like that song by the Stranglers, No More Heroes Anymore.
That translates to me as rocking in the free world if you've taken the 5 stabs.
Yeah. It's
another paradox.
Yeah. And so tell us more about the Ayurvedic stuff. Did you actually really get into doing the diets with the different kinds of food and stuff like that?
Yeah, to a point. Not religiously or anything, but my body type, according to the Ayurvedic system, is Vata, or as Deepak would say, Vata. So Vata and Pitta. But I'm a Vata, so my metabolism is quite overactive. So he was talking about the best time of the morning to be creative and the best time to do things, and the best sleep cycles for somebody who's a Vata, and the best kind of things to eat.
Yeah.
And I followed that, and it's not done me any harm whatsoever. I really enjoy doing it. So I'm kind of a morning person, and my ideas and creativity comes first thing in the morning. And I find it hard sometimes to relax if I've got ideas in my head. I need to get them written down. And apparently, this Vata body type that needs to be to be refreshed needs to be going to bed between 10 and 6 a.m. in the morning, and that works for me. And I learned that from him, so I kind of followed these natural cycles for this body type that was most relevant to me.
I tell you what I got from him. I learned about Hinduism. My interest in Hinduism directly came from him. I read the Bhagavad Gita and didn't fully understand it until I read his version of it and showing how Krishna is really talking about quantum physics. That was an astounding thing for me. And in the book to go with it. The another thing was I learned about Rumi and the poetry of Rumi. I didn't know. I never heard of Rumi.
Yeah.
I'd read lots of books on the occult and magic and everything long before that. But when I read the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, I was like, this guy has basically written a magic book. It's basically...
I've got that book here.
Yeah. It's that's the one. And it's so simple. It has the ability to actually change your life. And later things came out, like The Secret was heavily based on that. But it really is the things about changing how you think about. Literally, there was a lot of chaos magic type things in it, like changing how you speak, how you think, how you approach things. I mean, this was radical stuff back for mainstream times back then. No one else was doing anything like this, and so I got that from him, that he made me realize that you could simplify magic and manifestation and invocation very simply. You could actually take the nonsense out of it, and that it was cross-compatible with things like Hinduism and Buddhism.
Yes.
That suited me fine. And he also had a great love of poetry, and he was always quoting like Yeats and Milton and Keats and all kinds of poets and Shakespeare, as well as like Eastern poets in his books. They'd often be in the headlines of chapters and stuff like that. So you felt like when you were reading his books, you were getting this. When I came around to be an author myself, I wanted to be like that, to give little mini educations within the actual topics and stuff like that. And he was fantastic at that. And it's sad to see him say things like that. He used to do a closing thing at the end of all his talks, and I've used it myself in my talks, and it's a Rumi quote. He says, "Out there beyond right doing and wrongdoing is a field. I'll meet you there." And he's so far from that field now. The Rumi verse is about, out there is a truth that goes beyond any prejudice or preconceived notions. It's that Luciferian light of absolute truth that it's blindingly apparent. And he was talking about that, and he's not in that field anymore. I don't feel I could ever meet him in that field. Well, it was never the Oprah thing, was never any of that stuff. It was what he's done now. He's actually profaned his own field of work.
I think the best advice I could give to Deepak Chopra, if he's watching this, is he really needs to go back and read his own earlier stuff and get himself together.
Yeah.
And have a really good think and a look in the mirror.
Or maybe take a pilgrimage back to his roots. go back to India and
Absolutely. Never
do
forget where you come from.
do a kind of a mission quest, a vision quest, a secret journey, and bring it all back home. Because even if he felt that way, it was just the arrogance of it. It was very surprising to me. It was the last thing it sounded like to me was spiritual.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we could put a link to that article in the comments so people can have a read of that, because it is interesting, triggering, but interesting.
Yeah, because it's so surprising. So,
but not only that, Thomas, there was the needlecraft there, but the other article he was discussing what I deemed to be transhumanism.
Oh yes,
very subtly. Adapt with technology or you become extinct, and that's a quote from him, which is another thing that's disappointed me. And again, I don't believe personally that spirituality, magic, and the old ways has any room for technology. It just doesn't go together.
No,
it just doesn't, because it's all in here.
Yeah, but especially, well, digital is incompatible, because
no, absolutely not.
The digital signal exists nowhere in nature. It's entirely
analog.
And when you hear these like new ages go, I am a biological computer. No, you're not.
No, you're an analog broadcaster and receiver.
Radio,
That's it.
Radio station.
Yeah.
You're not nothing digital about. You're not computing anything.
Because the new age groups say, and I agree with them to a point, that there's everything in this space and it's like a radio station. So just because Radio 1 is broadcasting, it doesn't mean that Radio 2 isn't broadcasting. You're just not tuned into it. So the frequency is like radio stations, and radio stations were analog until this digital came in. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's a two-way system, a broadcaster and a receiver.
Only he knows what's led him to this point.
I don't know. I've got the article here, and he defends it and justifies it by saying that we need to use the technology responsibly and mindfully. Never going to happen.
No.
Never gonna happen. So I don't know.
We'll leave it at that. Okay, now we have a new segment. This is Sara and psychic hygiene or spiritual hygiene. What should we call it, Sara?
I like psychic hygiene. Just keeping your energy clear and clean, or as we talked about before, just keeping your analog system open and clear.
Okay.
As a broadcaster and a receiver.
Roll the credits.
Okay, so this week is just a quick a tip, an idea from my own practice. As we know, our nervous system, it extends out into the environment when we're out and about, and we're walking through a soup of other people's thoughts and emotions and intentions. And we know it has an effect on us if we're not aware of it. And sometimes it can lead us wondering what the hell happened to make us feel so crap. And we can also be susceptible to psychic attack if we're walking around with weakened auras and leaving the psychic doors open to anything and everybody, affecting our etheric bodies. So there are simple tasks that we can do to keep our energy clean and moving, because stuck energy becomes stagnant energy. So I'm going to share some of my own tips and ideas on how I keep myself psychically clean and strong. And one of the things that I do is a chakra meditation, but not in the new age fluffy type of chakra meditation. Some people hear the word chakras and think of that new age fluff, but they are actually important energy junctions in the body. And if we don't call them chakras and we call them important energy junctions, it's important to keep them clear and clean so that life energy or prana can keep moving around the body in order for you to stay healthy. And one of the things I like to do is a meditation involving those energy junctions, but I like to focus on the Sanskrit words for the chakras and the corresponding colours, which again are just colours that we as humans have given to them. But using those colours does help for visualization if you struggle with focusing on those points in the body. So I settle myself down and close my eyes, and I just try to visualize myself being covered in a particular color with that particular energy junction, just for a couple of minutes for each of the 7 energy junctions. And I put my attention and consciousness on those areas of the body for each chakra. And it usually takes me about 15 minutes, and I do it before I go to sleep and 15 minutes in the morning, and it refreshes me and I just feel much more centered and grounded afterwards. And that's really important, because if you're not grounded in your body, then you can just be easily manipulated by people out there, and find yourself making rash decisions and saying yes to things that you want to say no to. So it's important to have a really strong anchor to the earth and to be present in the body throughout the day. And if you feel insecure in your psychic body, then you're going to be much better equipped to deal with any of the shitstorms that may come towards you in the course of the day. Actually, I did a couple of minutes meditation before we did this recording, and I focused on the throat chakra, so I could say what I wanted to say clearly, so that people could understand and to speak honestly and with integrity. So that's my suggestion for the week. For some all-round psychic hygiene, is just keep your life force energy clean, or your prana clean, or whatever word you want to call it, just by cleaning out those energy junctions or those chakras regularly. And all it takes is just a 15-minute meditation and just focus on the energy junctions.
On this street of rather attractive Regency-style architecture buildings, on April 19th, 1900, took place the Battle of Blythe Road. This involved a fracas between factions within the occultic Order of the Golden Dawn, and specifically involved an altercation which happened on the stairs of the London headquarters of the organisation, involving the Irish poet William Butler Yeats and the famous British occultist Aleister Crowley. The situation came about when MacGregor's Mathers in Paris had informed Crowley that there was a certain element led by Yeats who were attempting to take over the Golden Dawn. He sent Crowley as his emissary to Blythe Road and told him to dress in full Celtic regalia, which Crowley naturally did. Upon entering the building, Crowley issued the sign of the inverted pentagram and began to issue magical incantations that were delivered to him by MacGregor's Mathers. At the top of the stairs, a rather undignified kick by William Butler Yeats brought the proceedings to an end, when it caused Crowley to fall down the steps, eventually to be escorted out of the building by a constable. However, it was not to end there, as something of a kind of magical espionage took place between William Butler Yeats and Aleister Crowley, in that a mutual friend, the Irish artist and poet Althea Giles, was recruited, possibly by Yeats, to pretend to enter into a romantic relationship with Crowley, whereby she procured a lock of his hair which Yeats could use to protect himself on the Golden Dawn from Crowley's magical prowess. And this may have been the main root of the grievance of Yeats towards Crowley, not only may it have been based on Yeats's unfair criticism of Crowley's poetry, but also how Crowley moved quickly through the ranks of the Golden Dawn and was about to enter into the second level. Yeats felt that Crowley and Mathers were going to try and take over the order and run it for themselves. The conclusion to this was Althea Giles ended up in extreme poverty, although coming from a very wealthy aristocratic Irish family. William Butler Yeats died in France during the Second World War, and his desire to be buried in County Sligo in Ireland remains controversial as people don't believe his actual bones are in that grave. And finally, Crowley went on to become basically one of the greatest cultural icons of the 20th century. The Battle of Blythe Road on the surface may seem comical, even slapstick, but the reality is what built out of it echoes with us to the present in terms of all kinds of cultural and other artistic tangents. This is Thomas Sheridan reporting from Kensington, London. So that was my report on the famous Battle of Blythe Road in London. And we're going to feature at least one of these outside location reports in every episode. If you have a report, and you can keep it under 5 minutes, that you would like to send us to us on the show on a Fortean site, a megalithic site, a ghost site, something to do with a serial killer, anything that could be kind of within the framework of this show, and you can use it to promote your own channel, please do. We're inviting people, if they want to come in and send their own reports, we'd be delighted to have you and allow you to promote your channel on this program. So don't be shy, send me an email. I'll put my email link below and you can contact me there if you want to do this. We will be having guests at certain points in the future, but at the moment we're just letting the show find its feet and try and hit the ground running. And I hope you like what you're watching so far. I know I'm enjoying it very much. So, Sarah, we're going to conclude the show now with our favorite books, or not our favorite books, books that have inspired us over the years. That I've done lots of book reviews on my channels and people love them. And so any books that have brought us to this point, we're going to talk about every week. And so, Sarah, what's your book this week?
Okay, well, just to keep things on track, it's this book by Deepak Chopra, Ageless Body, Timeless Mind. Can you see that? Okay, right. Has a big influence on me because it's about breaking the old beliefs of who we are and what we are. And it talks about age being more of a choice than we think. Most people believe aging is something that happens whether we like it or not. And Deepak Chopra says that our bodies are aging beyond our control because it has been programmed to live out the rules of that collective conditioning. And the book goes into detail about what would happen if we went beyond those social collective conditionings. And he believes that the way we think and the way we eat and the way we behave can help us to put 30 to 50 years creative and productive and youthful years onto our lives. And he believes in this book that at age 50 we go into a second birth, because if we change the way we look at life and the way we live, the way we eat, think and create, then the age 50 we can go into a second life, because we've got another 30 to 40 years ahead of us. And that second life is lived with more wisdom and more consciousness, because we're more aware of what's going on. So yes, it's a fantastic book, and it talks about the science of longevity and gives you lots of ideas of how to live to be a centenarian, which is one of my ambitions. I'm working on it.
You want that letter? You want that letter from the Queen?
No, I don't need her. No, but yeah, it's a beautiful book, and it's full of information. about how we're multidimensional beings, and how to get into the gap, step into the gap, and to live more consciously, and not to take on board too much about what other people think about aging. So if you've got a mother or a father, for example, that and when your mother got her first grey hair, she was traumatized by that. Or when your father retired, he thought, oh, this is the beginning of the end. That kind of has an effect on how we see aging, and it's not like that at all. And it talks about very rarely in life does anybody actually die of old age. More often than not, they die of disease and illness that's been brought about by not living consciously, or not being healthy. And it's just, I just love the book. And it was this book that got me into Deepak Chopra. I think it was first published in 1989. And it's just a beautiful book with lots of exercises and lots of meditations in there as well. It's one of my favourites, because I'm all for putting a few extra years on life and just living it meaningfully and consciously and healthily. There's no point just living to go along to get along, but this book teaches you how to be your most authentic self, and it's wonderful.
True. It's definitely true. My granddad Sheridan was a decrepit old man by the time he was 50, and it was just the world he grew up in. I mean, he was born. When he was a boy, he had to deal with the War of Independence and the Civil War here in Ireland. So he went through all that stuff, and then he worked in a crap job all his adult life, menial labor, and so he just basically was done by the time he was 50. And it is true that you start taking off again at that age. You start like there's when your 50s are a huge decade of nostalgia. You start remembering very clearly your childhood and things like that. And there's a reason for that. You're actually not having a life review. You're being given the chance to have a go at it again, and and this time smell the roses and do the things you didn't do in the first 50 years. So I'm a big believer in that. Yep, that's so.
Also, it also teaches you how to keep your mind young as well. And I can actually vouch for this book, because next week I'm actually 51. So there you go.
There you go.
It's fabulous. Go for it. Just get the book and read it. You change your life.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And my book is in one of the topics tonight, and I didn't really think about it, but it is. It's Our Haunted Planet by John Keel. This book is a Fortean tour de force. John Keel is a lot like Robert Anton Wilson, is that when you're reading him, you feel like you're in a bar in some downtown American city with this old-time American journalist who's like knocking back scotches and talking to you about his paranormal experiences. It's very much in that style. It's almost like if Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca was a Fortean. And it's wonderful just for that reason alone. Now, of course, he wrote the Mothman Prophecy, which is probably his most famous work. But he was also the one who really delved deep into the first one to dive deep into the whole Men in Black thing, the concept that people who shouldn't be alive were alive, or bilocationism, people appearing on different parts of the world. And he was also one of my heroes, because he was one of the first people in this scene to actually say the whole UFO thing and aliens is bullshit. It's not. There's something else, and it's much more closely connected to fairy folklore and something like that. And he didn't call them extraterrestrials. He called them ultra-terrestrials, meaning that it was interdimensional in nature, and it was of this world. It was not from outer space. And his work is astounding and will live forever. And it's very approachable. It's very down to earth. It's Fortean in the most beautiful sense, that it just gets straight to the point of the strangeness of this world and why it's worth investigating the strangest. So that's my recommendation, Our Haunted Planet by John Keel. So that's the first episode of tonight. It's very special because the day, January 5th, is called Nullig na Ban in Ireland, which is called the Women's Christmas. And what happens is the tradition in Ireland where the men do all the housework and give the women a Christmas for themselves, and give them money to go shopping with their friends and things like that, and do the housework and the cooking and looking after the kids, to say thank you for all the effort that the women put in over the Christmas period and the holidays in Ireland. So it's happy Shona Nullig na Ban, Sarah, and that's a nice way, I think, to start our first ever Hocus Focus.
Yes, I've really enjoyed it. It's been absolutely fabulous. Really, really enjoyed it. And something you said there with that book about drinking scotch and talking Fortean, I think those are the best types of nights that you can have. They just fly by.
It is, or spending the day going around megalithic sites and then going to the pub in the evening. It is the most wonderful thing in the world. It's magic.
Absolutely. You can keep your nightclubs and all that. No, I'd rather just have a good day out exploring and then go and talking paranormal, Fortean, and having a good old drink and something to eat.
So we hope you all like the show. If you have any suggestions, things you'd like to talk about, you say do this, don't do that. Thanks very much, going shy. We're open to everything, and it's our first episode, and I think that we will expand this to bigger. Maybe some weeks we'll have much longer programs and some weeks shorter, and it's very casual, but we're aiming for one a week, but don't put us to that. We'll be going out at 8 p.m. on a Sunday night when the show is produced, finished and edited, whatever Sunday it is, and that's 8 p.m. UK Irish time, 9 p.m. Central European time, and add 7 hours onto that or take away 7 hours from that to East Coast Europe, USA. We're putting on a Sunday so people have their dinner in Britain and Ireland and Europe, can sit down and watch the show, and people in North America can enjoy it before lunch and stuff like that, or while they're making lunch. So thanks very much, Sarah, and I will see you on the next episode.
Yes, thank you. Look forward to it.
Bye-bye, everybody.